Hello, house party. Welcome back to our wilderness series. I'm here and I'm joined with Dan, our youth intern, and also Lauren, our prayer coordinator. How you doing, guys?
I'm great.
I'm doing super. Yeah, doing super.
I really like that shirt. It's real Pastor Dan vibes, I feel, right there.
I need to make an effort for these podcasts.
Yeah, you're right. I would have my hat off, but I'm like week 12, 13, 14 without a haircut, so this is just better kept under wraps, as we've discussed before. As we did last week, we did our Premier League predictions, and so it's only fair that we jump in this week. So Dan and Lauren will be doing this week's Premier League predictions. We're recording this on a Friday morning, so by the time you guys will have seen this, most of these games will have happened, so you'll know if we're right or wrong. I'm not doing it this week because I assume that I probably got the most wrong, and Dan probably got more right. So Dan, you're through the next round, and then Lauren. We have 4 games happening this weekend, and so we're just going to go quick fire. Dan, you're going to go first, and then Lauren. We have Aston Villa at home against Wolves. What's your score prediction?
Wolves 2-1.
Okay, Lauren.
4-2.
The Villa.
Me? Yeah.
All right. Watford at home to Southampton.
Southampton 1-0.
I was going to say that. Can I still say that, or not?
Yeah, you can go for that. Play it safe. Crystal Palace at home to Burnley.
1-0 Crystal.
I'm going to say a 1-1 draw.
There. And then a big one on Tuesday that will be happening. Brighton at home to Manchester United.
United 2-0.
3-1 United.
There, I'll take it. I'm hoping those are prophetic scorelines right there.
I prayed about it, so
We'll take it. Well, Brett, well, here, let's jump in. Dan, for all of our listeners who haven't been listening the last few weeks, where have we been, and where are we going with the Wilderness series?
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, me and Sophie jumped on, and we were discussing how the lepers found themselves in a wilderness, and how that wilderness was very much made, I guess, through social structures, and how Jesus comes to invite the outcast back into society, and sort of their wilderness journey. And then last week, Chris, you and I spoke on how Jesus found himself in the wilderness, and the temptations that he found himself in the wilderness, and how that's a time of testing, but a time that strengthens our faith. And so if you haven't been catching up on the Wilderness series, feel free to do that. All of them are available on YouTube, I think I'm right in saying, Chris?
Yeah.
On YouTube. So yeah, the real reason behind the Wilderness series is that I think we've all found ourselves in a bit of a wilderness with lockdown, that our social life and our commitments have been stripped from us, and we're maybe starting to come back into normality a wee bit, but I think we just wanted to name this as a bit of a wilderness for ourselves and for you at home, and really look at people in the Bible who went through a wilderness, and what can we learn off them so that we get the most out of this season, and are better from the other side of it. So continuing on from that, we have Gideon, and we're going to be looking at how Gideon spent time in the wilderness. What is the text telling us about wilderness, and what are our experiences personally from that, and hopefully you learned something from that. So Lauren, could you give us a bit of a recap of where we're going to jump into the story of Gideon?
yeah, sure. So we're going to pick Gideon up. Gideon starts in the book of Judges, in chapter 6, and I think what strikes me is at the very beginning of Judges 6, it paints a picture before we even meet Gideon of where the Israelites are, and the Israelites being the people that back in the time of Moses were freed from slavery to the Egyptians, But yet, right in Judges 6, we see the Israelites again in this place where they are just being tormented by enemies, where their land is just being stripped bare. And they even refer to it, like in metaphor, they refer to it of being like a plague of locusts, but instead of the locusts, it's actually their enemies. So that's where we pick Judges 6 up. To then the Israelites really go and cry out to the Lord and go like, God, where are you? And where have you been? You freed us back then, but look now, sort of thing. And then that's where we pick up as God begins to speak to Gideon.
Brilliant. And as you said, Lauren, Judges 6 onwards is kind of like where the story of Gideon will go, and in your engage section we'll encourage you guys to work through that and read through that. But really, one of, I guess, the most important dialogues, I feel like anyway, in the story of Gideon kind of starts around verse 11, and it runs kind of through, and it's this kind of back and forth with God and Gideon. But in verse 12 it says this: when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us over to the hand of Midian." And it goes on, there's like kind of 3 or 4 exchanges where God speaks into Gideon's situation. And essentially what happens here is Gideon tries to call God's bluff, where he's like, "We know you've done all these things before, but it's pretty clear you're not really doing much now. How can I just take your word for it whenever it feels like we've been abandoned by you? It feels like you've been silent, and as we've cried out, it also feels like you've been silent." And I love this, and part of the reason, Lauren, why we got you on this as well is because I feel like there's a lot of really important insight in this when it comes to communication with God, communing with God, talking to God, understanding God's someone who listens to us but also wants to speak to us, and how we're supposed to do that. And I guess this is a really, really interesting passage, because for me growing up, my understanding of prayer was you only prayed things that God wanted to hear. And so there's a way to pray, and you pray these words and phrases, and if you got them in the right correlation and the rest of the congregation agreed, then that was a good prayer. And really there's no good or bad prayers. Really there's just honest prayers, and that's what God kind of wants. And so that's kind of what we're going to be unpacking further. But to look broader, I'd love for you guys to pick up as well. When we look at the story of Gideon, what really jumps out, what really stands out for you guys?
I think it's interesting, even as Lauren was recapping the story, it reminded me of the prodigal son, that the first one that we done, and we spoke about how we would love for this to be a series where in the middle of people being at home, being in their houses, that they would come home, and that's what really happened. Was, you know, the Israelites were in the wilderness so long that they'd encamped there, like they'd made houses there, like they were setting up shop there, you know, and it was in the middle of the wilderness that then they thought, you know, let's cry out to God for help. And so that's like the bulk of the story of what are we learning from the story of Gideon, is that in the wilderness is a place of repentance. It's a place to come back home. And so just a reminder of that, like that, I guess is one of the big hearts of this series, is that actually during the wilderness that that young people would come home to him. I think as you get then into the story, it's just, for me, interesting when you look at the whole passage that Gideon starts off really, as you're saying, Chris, really communicating openly and honestly with Jesus, but frustratedly, and really putting the onus on God to move. And he's got one or maybe two eyes in the past in terms of like, God, you moved like this for our ancestors. Like why are you not moving? And God's just like, okay, I'll move. Like, and very similarly to how he did with Moses, like he moved through Moses. That's what Gideon's speaking about here. Like, why are you not moving the same way you did in our ancestors? And then God says, okay, you go in the strength that you have. And Gideon's like, oh, here, hold on a wee minute, like, maybe not, So I think it's just very interesting, because we will all communicate to God frustrations that we have and how he needs to move. We will pray that that friends and family might become Christians, and then God says, okay, we'll go speak to them, and they're like, oh, maybe not, So I think it's just very, like, that's what I find interesting straight off the bat.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. Like, in terms of when I was reading it, what really struck me is like, where is God's focus, or God through this prophet that God sent to speak to the Israelites, but also where are the Israelites' focus, and I think there's so many parallels that we can even see as we read the passage, and even that first part of it, even in our own lives, whenever it hits the fan, literally, and we're going, but God, this happened 2 years ago, this happened 4 years ago. It's like our brains are so amazingly designed that they're like, they try to be helpful, so whenever something happens, they'll try to like filter for it in the past in order that we can predict the future. So here I imagine like being right there with the Israelites, this is all happening, and automatically your brain's just going, this has happened before. Yet here is like God just slices through it and goes, no, this is how I view the past. I rescued you out of Israel. I rescued you out of Egypt. I set you free. I brought you into this land. So it's like, it's that like focus of like where the Israelites' focus and then where God's focus is, and how he wants to align our focus in order to then speak to us, or in this case, in order to then speak and start a conversation with Gideon.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I guess where I can imagine a lot of our young people are right now is, I think even just chatting to some of our young people, that they've had over this wilderness, if we want to call lockdown a wilderness, they've had these really high highs and these really low lows, where they've had some really profound encounters with God, and found some really cool new habits and rhythms with their relationship with Jesus, but also at times they felt like God's been silent and it's been more difficult. And I think what we can really pull from this is that that this is kind of a similar situation from Gideon. He's heard about how good God is, but right now in this moment, at this moment in time where we're touching on, it doesn't feel like that. And I guess really what we want to pull out is the importance of praying to God, being totally raw and transparent and honest with where we are at right now. And there's a phrase I use quite a bit when I was preaching Search Party last year, where I say to the young people all the time, God can't bless a version of you or a part of you. He wants to bless you, and he only gets to bless the real you, and that requires you coming to him as you are, not polished and put together with an Instagram filter on, but as you are in those moments. And I would love to hear from you guys, as we've got 5 minutes left on our countdown. What is your experience with prayer and being honest with God? And I'd just love to hear just a little bit of your journey and what you'd encourage our young people to do around that.
Yeah, I think for me, I probably had like a pretty easy going life, and so I've never really had to, I guess, channel anything or journey too much with God. I think I remember the first time really having to do that. It brings a new and a good dimension to that relationship, and I guess that's one of the good things that comes with going through hard times, is actually that you get to experience God in a new way. And my brother would say, it's only those that need comforted that God can be a comforter too. And so whenever we're going through those times where we need comforted, then we get to see God as a comforter, you know. But I remember during a time where I was really trying to journey stuff with God, just like being face down on the floor, like in work one day. There wasn't like other people in work, like this wasn't in the middle of like the staff room, like it was just me in work overnight, just in case you're wondering. But I was really just like being honest with God, you know, and there is a freedom and a beauty in being able to open up your heart and know that there's somebody listening, the other side of that. Yeah. And actually the good that does, because it's either that or we go through with these questions and with these concerns and we don't voice them. And so if we don't voice them, we don't get them answered, you know. And so, yeah, I think it just changes your prayer life from, you know, this structure and ticking a box every day to like, I know that I have a God that I can call my Father, that I can go to, and I can just lay out what is going on, you know, and it doesn't have to be presented in a certain way. It's presented to however it comes out, you know.
That's amazing. I think for me, like, God's just really spoken to me throughout my life about that He wants to hear my heart, because I think as well when we are open with God, that's actually when we listen back to what He's saying. Because if I'm just saying to God what He wants to hear, to be honest, I'm probably not as tuned into what He's going to say. For me, my journey is interesting with that, in terms of I was probably like the good little Christian girl growing up in Sunday school, and I did pray what God wanted to hear, and I thanked Him for what I thought you were meant to thank Him for, and sitting in a wilderness, as we're calling it in this pandemic and lockdown, all around a virus, similar age to you guys listening to this, at age 12, I got really sick with a virus, and that's actually probably, to be honest, where my real raw journey with God began, because I was then probably ill for 18 years, what should have only really been 2 weeks. And I think through that journey, it was just that conversation of God just opening my heart and pressing the buttons to go, be honest with me, be real with me, tell me whenever you actually are like on the edge of wanting to give up and let go. And it's in those moments that God would come in and He would speak back, and He would take that wrestle in me. I talk about those years being like the times I got closest to God simply because I was wrestling with Him. And I think it's in that raw wrestle that we see and experience and encounter the character of God. And it's from the character of God then that when we face the wilderness, when we're walking in the wilderness, that we know, well, this is who my God is, because I've been real with Him, He's been real with me, and I've been up close and personal with the Lord.
It's brilliant. We're out of time, guys, but thank you so much for joining us. You give us a lot for our own people to work through and to think about when it comes to their engaged section. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.